You know that feeling? Like every single day there's another headline about some new, incredibly powerful AI.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a bit dizzying, right? Trying to keep up with all the jargon, LLMs, MOE, RG, and figure out what it all, actually means.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. Think of this as your way to cut through the hype surrounding large language models.
It's really remarkable how fast this field is moving. We've gathered a whole lot of recent analysis from experts, places like Constellation Research, TYO Lab, Pecan AI, Domo Research AI Multiple, and even looked at some practical tools Zapier's been exploring.
Right.
Our goal here is basically to synthesize all this wealth of information to give you a clear picture of where LLMs are right now and, well, where they seem to be headed.
Exactly. And this isn't going to be some dry lecture, okay? This is more like your personal briefing on the key stuff happening with LLMs. We're really focusing on what these models can actually do right now,
Yeah.
how they're being used out there in the real world, and yeah, even some of the more unexpected uses we found.
Yeah, there are definitely some surprising ones.
We want to deliver those aha
Yeah,
moments for you, without just drowning you in like tons of unnecessary details.
right.
So our mission for this deep dive, pretty straightforward. Pull out the most critical knowledge about LLMs from these sources we have so you walk away feeling, well, informed and up to speed.
Okay, so with all that rapid change, where do we even start? I mean, maybe just by acknowledging the sheer scale of this evolution we're seeing.
Well,
The expansion, the innovation in the LLM space over just, say, the last year. It's been, well, truly noteworthy.
agreed. Totally agreed. So maybe to get a handle on it, let's talk about the major players and what their main models are bringing to the table.
Sounds good.
Let's start with OpenAI. We've got GPT-4o. The O is for Omni, I think,
Yeah, that's right. Omni.
which is built to handle text, images, and apparently soon, audio, all in a really integrated way.
Yeah, natively multimodal.
Then there's GPT 4.1, which has that massive 1 million token context window.
Huge.
Makes it a real workhorse
Yeah.
for crunching through tons of information.
Ah.
And our sources also mention an O series of models, including something called Deep Research.
Yes, those seem more specialized, optimized specifically for like really deep reasoning tasks.
Okay. And looking ahead, OpenAI seems to be pointing towards things like a responses API and an agents SDK.
Right, pushing towards more autonomous systems, potentially.
And interestingly, it sounds like some users have noticed maybe a different sort of conversational feel with GPT-4o.
Yeah, that's interesting feedback. It shows OpenAI is maybe trying this dual strategy, right? You have the super versatile models like TYO, but also these specialized tools in the O series. It suggests they recognize that, different tasks need different kinds of smarts.
Right, not one size fits all.
And the API and SDK stuff for agents, that definitely hints at a future where these models aren't just tools you use directly, but are integrated into more complex automated workflows.
Okay.
And that feedback on the conversational style, it's just a good reminder of that tricky balance between raw power and, well, the subtleties of how we actually interact with these things.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, now let's switch to Google. Their Gemini family. Wow, quite a collection there.
Yeah, quite a few.
You've got Nano for on-device stuff, Pro, kind of the main one, Ultra for the really heavy lifting, and Flash, which is all about speed. And then, of course, Gemini 1.5 and the newer 2.5 Pro with those, again, massive context windows.
Exceptionally large, yeah.
It seems like a key strength for Google is building that multimodality right in from the start and also, plugging it deep into their whole ecosystem search workspace.
That's a huge point. That ecosystem gives them a powerful advantage, doesn't it?
For sure.
Just the convenience of having Gemini woven through all their products. And yeah, that native multimodality focus is a big architectural choice.
They also have their own deep research feature, like OpenAI and something called Notebook LM Plus for researchers.
Right. Similar aims there.
But it sounds like maybe the initial rollout and how they handle citations caused a bit of discussion.
Yeah, there were some points raised there. It highlights the challenges, when you enter such a fast-moving competitive market and user expectations are really high.
Sure.
And the whole citation thing just underlines that ongoing need for like clarity and accountability in what these LLMs tell us.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. Anthropic, they have the Claude 3 family, Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku, plus the newer 3.5 and 3.7 updates for Sonnet and Haiku. Their big thing seems to be focusing on AI that's helpful, honest, harmless. that constitutional AI framework they talked about.
Right, that's their core philosophy, and it really stands out.
These models are noted for good reasoning, following instructions well, and handling really long texts.
Yeah, long context is definitely one of their strengths.
They also have tool use through an artifacts feature and strong multilingual support.
That artifacts feature is interesting. It affects how users can actually work with the generated content.
And for people needing more, like researchers, there's a research feature for premium users.
Yeah, Anthropic's clear focus on safety and ethics, that constitutional AI, it offers a really distinct approach that's probably quite appealing for organizations really concerned about, responsible AI deployment. And the focus on long context and tool use makes Claude a strong contender for those complex, maybe enterprise-level jobs.
Okay, makes sense. Then we've got Meta, the Llama family, Llama 2, the newer Llama 3, and versions like 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. Even a mention of Llama 4 somewhere.
Yeah, the Llama series, the big story there is really the open source nature, isn't it?
Totally. It's really sparked a lot of community development.
Absolutely. It's democratized access in a big way.
And Llama 3 is reportedly much better at reasoning, coding, following instructions, trained on a huge data set too.
The performance gains are pretty impressive, yeah. Shows how far open source models are coming, often catching up to the proprietary ones.
They're also moving into multimodality with Llama 3.2 and have safety tools built in. Plus, they offer the Llama API and something called Llama Stack for developers.
Right. That move to multimodality with 3.2 is just a natural next step, really reflects the demand for models that handle all sorts of data, and the open source community around it is just incredibly active.
Okay, next up. Cohere, Command R and R plus models plus embed and re-rank. Their niche seems to be enterprise-grade RIG, that's retrieval augmented generation, right?
Exactly. And tool use, that seems to be their focus.
They offer a big context window, multi-language support, and they're built for production scaling.
Yeah. Cohere's strategy targeting enterprise RA is smart. They're providing a whole suite for it, including those crucial embedding and re-ranking bits.
Right, the whole package.
Addresses a key need for businesses wanting to use their own data with LLMs. And the tool use focus adds value for automating business processes.
Makes sense. And finally, Mistral AI. Models like Mistral 7B, Mistral 8x7B and 8x22B, Mistral Large 2, and Coastal.
They've certainly made a splash quickly.
Yeah, strong open source contributions, efficient designs using things like GQA and SMOE.
Mixture of experts, yeah. Very efficient architectures.
And that dedicated coding model. Coastal supports a ton of languages, long context window.
That specialized coding model is a great example of tailoring LLMs for specific professional fields. Over 338 languages, I think. And yeah, long context too.
Wow. Plus, Mistral Large is getting recognition for top-tier reasoning.
Yeah, Mistral's rise has been pretty remarkable. Their commitment to open source, plus those architectural innovations, lets them deliver high performance potentially more efficiently.
Okay. Wow, so that's a whirlwind tour of the big players and their models.
Sure.
Now, let's dig a bit deeper. What are the sort of fundamental architectural trends driving all these advancements?
Well, the absolute bedrock is still the transformer architecture. That hasn't really changed.
Right, that's the foundation.
Its ability to understand context in sequences, that's still the core building block for pretty much all the leading LLMs we just discussed.
Okay, so that's table stakes now. What other key patterns are emerging in how they're built?
A big one is the increasing use of mixture of experts, or MOE.
Right, you mentioned that with Mistral.
Exactly. Models like DeepSeek V2 and Mistral use it. The basic idea is instead of one giant model, you have a collection of smaller, more specialized expert networks.
Okay.
And for any input, a sort of router figures out which experts are best suited to handle that specific part of the task.
Oh, interesting.
So you can have a model with a huge number of parameters, meaning lots of potential knowledge, but keep the actual computing cost for each query lower because only a few experts are active at any one time.
Gotcha. So it's like having a massive team of specialists on call, but you only bother the ones you actually need for that specific job.
Precisely. It's a really clever way to scale up the model's capability without computation getting out of hand.
Yeah, sounds very efficient. What else is fundamentally changing the architecture?
Another huge trend is the push towards multimodality. We touched on it with GPT-4o and Gemini.
Right, handling images, audio.
Exactly. Models like those, and Claude 3 too, can now natively process and understand not just text, but images, audio, sometimes even video.
Wow.
This ability to work with multiple data types at once just opens up a massive range of new possibilities. Think analyzing medical scans, understanding voice commands.
Yeah, totally new applications.
It's a big step towards AI that can, interact with the world in a more holistic way.
Definitely. Moving beyond just text feels like a major leap. And I keep hearing about these context windows getting bigger and bigger. Why is that such a big deal?
Oh, the expanding context window, the amount of info the model can juggle at once is truly transformative.
How?
Models like GPT 4.1, Gemini 1.5, Pro, Cohere's command RR plus A, Llama 3.1, 3.2, Mistral, Cadastrol, they can handle enormous amounts of text now. Hundreds of thousands, even millions of tokens in some cases.
That's incredible.
And it's not just more information. It enables a qualitative shift in what they can do.
How so?
Well, imagine feeding an entire novel to an AI and asking it about complex themes, or processing huge legal documents to find precedents, or understanding a massive code base without losing track.
Right, it wouldn't forget the beginning by the time it gets to the end.
Exactly. It's like dramatically boosting their working memory.
That does sound like a game changer for complex tasks. And you mentioned advanced attention mechanisms earlier. How do they fit in?
Right. So as these context windows get bigger, the computational load increases significantly.
Makes sense. More data to process.
So researchers are developing smarter ways for the model to focus its attention on the most relevant parts of that massive input. Techniques like grouped query attention, GQA, used in Llama 3 and Mistral 7B.
Okay.
Sliding window attention, SWA, also in Mistral 7B, and multi-head latent attention, MLA, in DeepSeek V2. They're all designed to make processing these long sequences more efficient.
So they help the model focus without getting bogged down.
Essentially, yes. They let the models allocate their attention more strategically, cutting down the computational cost without hurting performance too much.
Okay, so all these architectural pieces, transformers, MoE, multimodality, bigger context, smarter attention, they're all working together to push these models forward.
Exactly. It's a combination of factors.
Now let's shift gears a bit. How are people actually using these things day to day? Our sources from Constellation Research had some interesting findings on Anthropic's Claude models. What were some of the main use cases?
Yeah, it was an interesting mix. Not surprisingly, helping with web and mobile app development was right up there.
Okay, standard tech use.
Followed closely by content creation and communication. Also, big uses in academic research and writing, career development, and helping businesses optimize their AI strategy.
Right.
Really highlights how versatile these language tools are in professional settings.
Those all sound like areas where strong language skills would be super valuable. But I remember there were also some more niche kind of individual uses mentioned.
Yes. And that's a great reminder that these powerful tools aren't just for work. People are using them for things like, believe it or not, dream interpretation.
Really? Wow.
Helping draft disaster preparedness plans, getting hints for crossword puzzles, even making games like Dungeons and Dragons more interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It shows a much broader, maybe more creative application than you might first think.
Totally. Speaks to the playful potential, too.
And it seems like the popular uses can even vary depending on the language.
Absolutely. Anthropic's analysis found some really interesting language-specific trends for Claude.
Like what?
Well, for Spanish speakers, there was a noticeable focus on economics, child health, and environmental topics.
Okay.
In Chinese, popular uses included writing, like crime and thriller fiction, but also helping with elderly care.
Interesting combo.
And for Japanese users, big areas were creating anime and manga content, economics again, and also elderly care again.
Wow. That really shows how, the cultural context and local needs shape how these global tools actually get used on the ground.
Precisely. General-purpose tools adapted for specific interests.
That's a great point. Okay, let's explore another big area. How LLMs meet data analytics. Pecan AI has some good insights here.
Yeah, and the crucial thing to grasp, I think, is that LLMs aren't here to replace traditional data analytics.
Okay, that's important.
They're meant to enhance it. Their big strength is processing all that messy, unstructured text data, think customer reviews, social media chatter, open-ended survey
The
answers.
stuff that's hard to quantify normally.
Exactly. They can do things like sentiment analysis, figure out if people are happy or mad, identify key topics being discussed, pull out important keywords.
So adding a qualitative layer.
Precisely. Adds context that pure numbers might miss, gives you a much more holistic view of the data landscape.
So they help make sense of all the text data that used to be just too hard to analyze at scale.
That's a great way to put it. And they can even help with some of the grunt work in data prep, like cleaning up text data sets. Some sources even suggest they could help create data visualizations.
Interesting.
But the real magic happens when you bridge that gap between your structured number data and this unstructured text data. That allows for a much richer, deeper understanding.
That sounds incredibly useful for getting, actual insights, not just data points.
Yeah.
What about predicting things? Can LLMs help with predictive analytics?
Well, yes and no. They're language models first, right? Not primarily number crunchers.
Okay.
But they can contribute. Their knack for understanding context and pulling meaning from text can help identify new features for predictive models.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like, analyzing the sentiment in customer support chats might be a really good predictor of whether that customer is likely to leave.
Ah, okay. I see.
But it's crucial to remember their limits with purely numerical data. They aren't going to replace statistical modeling for forecasting sales based just on past numbers.
Right.
Often, the best approach is integrating LLM insights with traditional predictive methods.
So they add context, especially when language matters for the prediction.
Yeah.
Did Pecan AI give some real-world examples?
They did. In hospitality, for instance, analyzing reviews to pinpoint areas for improvement and predict guest satisfaction.
Makes sense.
In retail, digging through market research and social media to spot emerging trends. And in finance, using them for risk assessment by analyzing text in loan applications for potential red flags.
Okay, those are really concrete examples. Shows the practical value.
Definitely. It shows the benefit of combining LLMs with existing analytics.
Okay, so it's clear that you can't just grab any LLM off the shelf. Choosing the right one for your specific task is key.
Yeah.
Domo had a helpful framework for this, right?
Yeah, Domo really emphasized that it's not a one-size-fits-all game. You need the best tool for that specific job.
So what factors should you be looking at?
Well, first and foremost, the task type. What are you actually trying to do? Generate creative text, summarize long report, answer questions, write code. Different models shine in different areas.
Okay, task first. Makes perfect sense. Like you said, screwdriver versus hammer. What's next?
Accuracy, this is obviously critical, especially if you need factual correctness. Benchmarks like MMLU that tests knowledge across lots of subjects can give you some comparative data points.
All right, check the specs.
Yeah.
What about the cost involved?
Cost is definitely a big one for most people. Providers usually charge per token, both input and output.
Right.
And the prices can vary wildly. Domo pointed out, for example, a super advanced model like GPT-4 might cost way more per million tokens than a less powerful one. You got to factor in your budget and how much text you'll be running through it.
Yeah, that could add up quickly. What about how fast they work?
Speed, yeah. Or throughput, usually measured in tokens per second. That's important for anything real-time like a chatbot. Generally, the bigger, more complex models might be a bit slower than smaller, leaner ones. Domo contrasted, I think, Haiku's speed with Opus's power. It's often a trade-off.
The speed versus capability. A classic trade-off.
Yeah.
What else?
The context window length. We talked about this. It's crucial if you're dealing with massive documents or need to remember long conversations. A model like GPT-4 Turbo can handle way more text than the original GPT-4, for instance.
Right. Need that bigger memory for long inputs. And data security, always a concern.
Always. Data security is top of mind, especially with sensitive or company data. Domo mentioned their Llama GPT, which can run in a private cloud.
Oh.
That keeps your data locked down. For orgs with strict privacy rules, that kind of private hosting is a huge plus.
All right, that's a really practical framework, super helpful for making those choices. Now let's look ahead. Research A Multiple gave us some clues about future trends. What's coming down the pike?
One big area is better fact-checking with real-time data. The idea is for LLMs to pull in up-to-date info from the web, maybe even provide citations, kind of like Microsoft Copilot tries to do.
That'd be huge for trust, right? Tackling those hallucinations.
Exactly. A major step towards making them more reliable, addressing that outdated knowledge problem.
What else is on the horizon?
We're also likely to see more use of synthetic training data, basically LLMs generating their own training examples to learn from. Google's done research on models self-improving this way.
AI teaching itself.
Sort of, yeah. It could make training more efficient and boost capabilities, maybe reducing the need for so much human-labeled data.
Interesting. What about making them less resource hungry?
That ties into the idea of sparse expertise. Remember Moe? This is similar. Instead of the whole giant network lighting up for every query, maybe only the relevant expert parts activate.
Right. Specialization again?
OpenAI is looking into this. It could lead to more efficient models that need less computing power, more specialized, too.
Seems logical. Make them more accessible. And how will they fit into our work lives?
Even deeper integration into enterprise workflows. Think tools like Salesforce Einstein Copilot, embedding AI right into business apps for customer service, HR, decision-making.
So AI assistants becoming just part of the software we use every day.
Pretty much. More integrated AI helpers automating tasks and boosting productivity inside companies.
Okay. And handling different kinds of data.
Yeah, the hybrid LLMs with multimodal capabilities trend will definitely continue. Models like DALE, GPT-4, Gemini processing text, images, audio, they'll just get better, leading to richer applications like advanced image captioning, visual Q&A.
More intuitive ways to interact, maybe?
The lines between data types are blurring for these models.
And you mentioned specialization before. Sounds like we'll see more of that.
Absolutely. The rise of fine-tuned domain-specific LLMs is already happening.
Like GitHub Copilot for code?
Exactly.
Right.
Or Bloomberg GPT for finance, Google's MedPalm 2 for healthcare, chat law for legal stuff.
Right.
Training models on highly specific data usually means fewer errors and better accuracy within that niche.
Makes total sense. A medical expert model for medical questions. Now, okay, they're powerful, but not perfect. Research AI also pointed out some current limitations. What are the big challenges still?
Yeah. Despite all the progress, there are still hurdles. Accuracy is a big one. Even the best models can sometimes just make stuff up, hallucinate.
Right, confident nonsense.
Benchmarks help track progress, but it's an ongoing issue needing more work.
Okay, so don't blindly trust everything they say. What else?
Capacity limitations, those context windows, they're bigger, but still finite. There are still practical limits on how much text they can truly process effectively at once without losing the plot, so to speak, especially for really long inputs.
So still some constraints on how much they can remember and process. And what about their knowledge cutoff?
Yeah, their pre-trained knowledge is usually frozen in time.
Right, based on when they were trained.
So unless they're specifically hooked up to live search, they generally don't know about very recent events and can give outdated info.
Good points to keep in mind. Powerful, but not magic or all-knowing. This brings up something interesting from Pecan AI. With AI getting better at analysis, what happens to human data experts? Are jobs at risk?
Well, the dominant view seems to be that LLMs are complementary tools. They augment human skills in analytics. They don't replace them.
Okay, so they help, not replace.
That seems to be the consensus. While they can automate tasks and process tons of data, things like human judgment, creativity, understanding the real context, those are still essential.
So the human touch, the critical thinking, still vital. Does this mean the skills data pros need are changing?
Oh, absolutely. The skill set is definitely evolving. There'll be more need for people who can work with these LLM tools effectively, understand the basics of the AI, and adapt to new ways of working.
So learning to leverage the tool.
Exactly. Continuous learning is key. It's more about enhancing our abilities with AI rather than being replaced by AI.
That's a much more positive way to look at it. Okay, let's switch gears one last time. TYO Lab looked at open source LLM chat UIs. What are those exactly?
They're basically free, modifiable chat interfaces, ways to talk to LLMs.
Okay, like alternatives to the official ChatGPT website.
Yeah, pretty much. They give you more control, more flexibility. You can often connect them to different LLM backends, not just one company's model.
Ah, okay. So you could use one interface to talk to, say, an OpenAI model 1 minute and maybe a Llama model the next.
Potentially, yeah. Depending on the UI. TYO Lab looked at a whole bunch. OpenWeb UI, LibreChat, anything LLM, GPT-4 all, Ubabuga.
Just a light chuckle.
Ubabuga.
Yeah, text generation web UI is its other name.
Yeah.
Verba, DeFi, Silly Tavern, Dancer, Lobe UI, Hugging Face Chat UI, Kobold Crap, Private GPT, Surge Chat, Shan. There are quite a few now.
Wow, that's a lot of options. What are the main differences between them?
Well, some are better at connecting to lots of different LLM providers. Others focus on running offline for privacy. Some are really good at that R-Shay stuff, chatting with your own documents.
Yeah.
And others are super customizable with plugins. The ease of setup also varies a lot.
Right. Some might be trickier for non-techie users.
Definitely a factor.
So it sounds like you pick based on your needs, flexibility, privacy, ease of use. Did TIO Lab have any standouts?
They thought anything LLM looked pretty versatile because it could connect to many different models.
They also mentioned LobeChat and Yan as having potential good features, nice interfaces,
Yeah.
but they did caution that installing some of these can still be a bit of a hurdle if you're not technically inclined.
Gotcha. So the open source chat UI world is growing fast, offering cool alternatives, but maybe still needs to get a bit more user-friendly for everyone.
Exactly. But it's a really significant development, offering more control and customization, especially for people who value that open source approach.
Well, this has been incredibly thorough, a real deep dive into LLMs. We've covered the big players, the tech underneath, how they're used, data analytics, choosing models, the future, the limits, the human angle, and even these open source interfaces.
It really is such a dynamic field, isn't it? The speed of progress across all these areas, model capabilities, efficiency, applications, UI, it just shows how quickly this tech is maturing and weaving itself into, well, pretty much everything.
So as we wrap this up, what are the absolute key takeaways you want our listener to hold on to from all this?
I'd say remember the incredible pace of progress, the trend towards specialized models for specific tasks, the growing importance of multimodality and handling huge amounts of info, how LLMs are increasingly augmenting analytics and workflows, and the parallel growth of both powerful proprietary systems and really capable open source options.
That's a perfect summary. Really captures the complexity. And with all that bouncing around in your head now, here's maybe one final thought for you to chew on. As these LLMs get tangled even deeper into our daily lives, our work, how do we actually best harness their power while staying smart about their limitations? It feels like the question we'll need to keep asking as this tech keeps racing forward.
Indeed. Staying informed, thinking critically about the implications, that's going to be essential as you figure out how these tools can best work for you, whether personally or in your organization.